Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win here, and we're back for Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are going to be taking a look at the Shadow's Mantle armor set for the Demon Hunter. A very different type of set for the Demon Hunter. Usually they're a pew-pew set. Here it is. This is the Shadow's Mantle. We're going to be using 5 pieces of this. I will bring up the ability here. What it says is, while equipped with a melee weapon, your damage is increased by 6,000%. Shadow power gains the effect of every ruin and lasts forever. And the 6-piece bonus is that Impale gets a damage buff as well. We're also going to be using a gold set here, which gives us reduced damage taken by 15% and increases our damage dealt by 30%. That's mostly what we're going to be using it for. We're also going to be using Carly's Point, which is the damage of Impale is increased by 358%, and it regenerates 15 hatred for you. We're also going to be using Chain of Shadows, so that way we can get a little bit of Volt ability. As you can see, we're also going to be using the Compass Rose, Convention of Elements, obviously a Traveler's Pledge to go with that Compass Rose, and then in the offhand, we're going to be using Holy Point, which is vital for this because it allows us to get multiple Impales off at the same time. So here is what we have set up. Volt, Fan of Knives, Bladed Armor, Shadow Power, Gloom. But it doesn't matter because we're going to get all the ruins for it. Companion, Wolf Companion, because this is pretty much the best companion that you could use. Vengeance, Dark Heart. We're not going to rely on this too much outside of regenerating our hatred. Impale, Ricochet, because every time that our Impale hits a mob, it will move over to a mob that's adjacent to it. And since we're throwing out 3 knives at the same time, we'll be able to do more damage that way. In our Cube's passive, we have Called the Weak, Awareness, which is very helpful for the set. We also have Ambush, and in our Kanai's Keep, we have Dawn, Stone Gauntlets, Ring of Royal Grandeur, because we are using a gold mixed with the Shadow's Mantle set, so we have to mix up things. Here's our Paragon points. If you're somebody that needs to see things on paper, I will have a link in the description to the armor set, so don't worry here. I'm going to increase these 50 points to gold pickup radius. I thought I had done that already. Clearly I didn't. I do play around with the Paragon a bit, and I do reset things from time to time. But this is pretty much what your Paragon should be set up. Obviously, if you're playing in Season 22, you're not going to have too much access to a lot of Paragon. That's something you're going to have to work towards. But you would want to focus on Dexterity first, critical hit chance, cooldown reduction. Those 3 things are the main things to focus for at first. Then you want attack speed, movement speed, stuff like that. Okay, so we are going to do today a couple of Greater Rifts to give you a feel as to exactly how this armor plays. We're going to do Greater Rift 60, 65, and 70. Keep in mind this, unlike the Gears of Dreadland armor, which is available in the playlist, is not a spin-to-win armor. It's going to take you a while to push certain Greater Rifts, so keep that in mind. Immediately, you want to activate your Shadow Power. That way you can get the biggest amount of damage off. Then you're really just going to hang back and fire off Impales, as you see here. Since you're throwing out 3 Impales, every time they connect to something and there's another adjacent mob, those Impales will move over to the next target, dealing massive amounts of damage. In our Kanai's Cube, we have the Zale Stone of Vengeance, so that the further away we are, the more damage we deal with these Impales. We also have Bane of the Stricken. This is mostly for when you're going against elite packs that don't go down super fast. And also, we have a Bane of the Trap because, yes, when you slow things down with Impale, it's pretty nice because there's a built-in slow effect thanks to the secondary ability when you level up the gem of Bane of the Stricken. So, pretty much you're going to be hanging back most of the point, or most of the time, shooting off Impales, as you can see here. Every once in a while, you have to be careful and keep an eye on your hatred. Your hatred will go down if there are too many mobs on the screen. And when that happens, you want to do here, as you saw, Vengeance. And what you're really going to be doing is you're not really going to be using your Vengeance with your Impale unless you can see a lot of mobs around. What you're going to want to do is actually use your Volt, because that will build up a bit of hatred while you're waiting for our targets to, or while you're waiting for your hatred to regen a little bit. So keep that in mind. You can't get super aggressive. You don't want to constantly hold in the Impale when you're in Vengeance mode, because what's going to happen is you're going to burn through that hatred quite a bit. One of the drawbacks to Shadow's Mantle is that you have to be very reserved in your playstyle. You can't get super aggro, because if you get super aggro, chances are you're going to waste a lot of your Vengeance, which is a pretty big no-no, because then you have no primary attacks to attack with in this particular armor set, because it's all about hitting with these Impales. As you can see there, you have to kind of dance around a little bit. Sometimes you got to hang back just to get your hatred to regen a little bit on its own. Case in point here, I'll go back to the same strategy here. I'm just going to be firing impales from far away, trying to group up the mobs into high density areas, so that way there's a lot of mobs, so when my impale hits, it's going to keep ricocheting on to our targets, so that way I don't waste a lot of hatred. Case in point there. Another thing with this thing is that since impale only shoots like free, kind of like kunai type of weapons out at the same time, you don't have as much freedom to the direction that you're attacking with, so that's why you have to be a bit more reserved. You can't just constantly chuck impales. You have to pick your targets very precisely and then hit them that way. This armor is a melee armor, so keep in mind that the damage that you're dealing with impale is melee damage. Even though it looks like you're shooting something, you're really just throwing something. And considering in this game, Diablo 3, when you throw something, sometimes it counts as melee damage instead. So Fan of Knives on here is mostly one of those abilities that you're going to want to use when you're bunched up with a lot of mobs and you need to just like slow them down really quickly and then be able to get distance. Other than that, you're really not going to click Fan of Knives too much. Looking for the exit here. Sometimes this one particularly is hard to find. But it's going to be the same strategy. You're going to be throwing impales off, and that's pretty much going to be your bread and butter to be able to do the most amount of damage. Every once in a while when you get into a tough spot, or you see like you're going to take a lot of damage, you definitely want to start activating your vengeance. Primarily, it's here to regenerate your hatred when you do not get a lot of it back. Did I go this way already? I do not believe I did. Okay. There we go. Also, make sure that you click the Wolf Companion from time to time. That way you could get back a little hatred that way as well. Impale goes off. See, it ricochets and hit our enemies even though I didn't hit them. So this is pretty much how this armor works. It's a very unique armor. In terms of tier list, you're not going to get very high in the tier. It's able to push high greater rifts, obviously, but it loses favor with some of the more stronger armors that are able to do a lot more for a lot less resources, that being the Gears of Dreadland armor, which is the starter set for Season 22 for the Demon Hunter. If you need a build for that, it is available in my playlist. So definitely check a look at the playlist. We have over 40 videos at this point for Diablo 3 in Season 22. We've covered just about every armor. We're covering some of the lesser known armors at this point, giving some players a bit more options. This does not do extremely well on the leaderboard because obviously you have to pick your spots. And although there's certain situations where you might get a good dungeon layout where you are able to clear it significantly fast, when you get higher up into the greater rifts, I'm talking greater rift 80, 90, and 100, you're going to start to be slightly overwhelmed with the amount of mobs and trying to maintain your hatred while also trying to not take a hit, because the Demon Hunter is very similar to the Necromancer, is a class that if it stands still for a little too long, it can be squashed. Obviously, we got Traveler's Pledge to mitigate some of the issues that happen from standing still or moving around while you're moving into like pools of acid, which this armor struggles greatly for. Most of the time, you really want to hang back with this armor. In a way, I guess you could kind of compare this to like the Bone Spear Necromancer. The only difference here is that Bone Spear Necromancer is able to micromanage its resource generation a bit better than the Shadow's Mantle can. You know, I don't dislike necessarily this armor because I think it's kind of cool to bring a different playstyle, but in a way, you're still really pew-pewing to win in a way. You know, it's kind of similar to the Marauder build in a way, because you're going to rely heavily on keeping your distance to be able to do the most amount of damage possible, that being with your sentries. But mostly this kind of reminds me of the Bone Spear Necromancer playstyle, because the further back you are to your targets, the more damage you're going to deal with Stone Steel Vengeance and thing. The one good thing is you don't have to worry about constantly reactivating your Shadow Power, which is something that, and the fact that you get every rune, although Shadow Power as itself, as a skill, is not necessarily great, it's not necessarily bad, it's just something there. Honestly, I would have preferred if this armor set actually buffed Vengeance, which could have worked in tandem with that, but unfortunately, it does not buff Vengeance. There is not actually, to my knowledge, if I remember correctly, they haven't made one yet, a Demon Hunter set that actually buffs Vengeance whatsoever. There are some items that buff it, and you can mess around with your Kunai's Cube to get that. But when it comes to Kunai's Cube, you have very few available slots, too, as you're going to see in the Kunai's Cube. One good thing in this armor, though, is you will one-shot, usually, the Rift Guardian if you are geared appropriately and you are mostly optimized. I'll show you the gems that are on here right now to just 100% confirm for you. So we have a Bane of the Stricken, we have a Bane of the Trapped, and then we have a Zale Stone of Vengeance. Those are the ones that we're using. You can, in theory, run Bane of the Powerful for a while on this set if you want to do more damage to the Elite, but the further up that you go in the Greater Rifts, and I'm talking about already at Greater Rift 60, getting more damage from throwing your kunais or your blades or your knives, whatever you want to call them at the point, is more important because you're going to be zoning with this armor. You're not going to get up close and personal too much. Even though it's a melee armor, which seems very weird that a melee armor wouldn't get up close and personal, but this is probably one of the more effective builds to use with the Shadows Mantle set because of just how the armor's set up. Melee combat, really, for the Demon Hunter is kind of frowned upon, mostly. So, like, yeah, you could use one of the other versions of Impale, but it's not going to do too much for you in regards to getting very high up in the Greater Rift. So, this is probably the best build you can use to get the most out of the Shadows Mantle set. Same strategy as before. You're going to throw a whole bunch of kunais with chain, or not kunais with chains, but your kunais via Impale. I need to activate my actual Shadow Power. I haven't had a moment to activate it yet, but I will activate it in a second here. Let me get a little bit of distance. Even without Shadow Power, as you can see here, I'm just pretty much steamrolling through targets. One of the things I don't really like to do here too much is that when it comes to the Shadows Mantle, really you need to be able to hit things within a straight line, very similar to Bone Spear. If you get these very narrow corridors, some of your Impales aren't going to go off. I decided there to go Vengeance because there was a lot of enemies that could do a lot of damage here, and Vengeance reduces the amount of damage that I take, so that's also something to keep in mind. I'm gonna kunai here. I'm gonna take a step backward because there's a lot of mobs here. As you can see, I'm taking pretty much things down. This is a Greater Rift 65, for those of you who are wondering right now. So we went up by 5 Greater Rifts. Previous clear time was 6 minutes and 35 seconds. I think we're going to get very similar clear time. This is not armor that's good at speedrunning. This is a good armor for pushing Greater Rifts. I hear orbs going off left and right, so clearly we're doing something right. Let me vault away here. I got blocked off there, but it's fine. Okay. As you can see here, I'm running a little bit low on Vengeance, so I have to kind of be a bit more reserved with what I do, which is why, since I'm still in Vengeance mode, I was just going to vault around so I could build up a little bit of Hatred. That's a strategy that you could do with this armor when you see that you're running low on Hatred. Also, the fact that I got the pylon that does the lightning strikes for a while was able to give me a good thing. You could run Flavor of Time in here, but I don't necessarily recommend it because you really need the Traveler's Pledge so that way you don't take as much damage. Normally, when you're moving about with an armor set like this, you would be taking quite a bit of damage just for moving around. It's a good thing that we haven't run into really a dungeon layout where there were a lot of acid pulls because this armor struggles greatly being able to deal with all those impairing things like boys. Whoa, look at all those enemies. I'm going to step back here for some kunais. So basically, your main source of damage, as you can see throughout this, is just Impale. This is not really a very fancy set. In a way, this is kind of like playing as a ninja as the Demon Hunter. That's the best way I can kind of put it. It's like playing with a ninja and you're throwing your shurikens or your ninja stars or your kunais just straight line. That's what you're basically doing. You just got to think like you're a ninja at this point, playing maybe Ninja Gaiden and just having infinite kunais that you're able to fire off. As you can see, most of this actual play run through here, I actually haven't cooked my Shadows Power, which I probably should do, but I'm doing so much damage with the kunais and everything else that's going off at this point that really I don't have to do too much outside of hanging back here. I activated Vengeance. Obviously, you see, look at all that mob there. It has a lot of explosion and there's a lot of impairing effect. I really hate this particular dungeon in particular when it comes to doing Diablo 3 runs because the fire has a tendency to always coming out of the left field. When it looks like it's going to fire, it doesn't fire, and then when you think it's not going to fire, it fires, and it, you know, pretty much usually will one-shot you. That's where Stone Gauntlets is pretty good in this armor as well. I don't normally like running Stone Gauntlets just because I don't like to slow down a little bit because then you feel a little disoriented in your playstyle when you take damage. I got to move away from there because that fire's ready to go off there. But this is one of the perfect examples as to why you run Vengeance on this set because there's just so many things coming at me, from fireballs to obviously the flame, and then some of these mobs could shoot out poison. So Vengeance in conjunction with Stone Gauntlets gives you quite a bit more toughness, which is what you're definitely going to need to push higher greater rifts. The only problem with stone gauntlets is when you take hits, you're going to slow down a bit. So if you get hit a couple times, you're going to be really, really super slow and kind of disoriented. But you won't take a death, which is why people really gravitate towards using that in this particular build. All right, activate Vengeance again because I need to generate some hatred. It's too much hatred going off. As you can see, the Rift Guardian's going to be coming up here pretty soon. So I'm going to volt around a bit because that builds up a little bit of hatred. Okay. See, I got a little bit of hatred back. That's also based on the particular things I'm running in Kanai's Cube, as well as the weapon Carly's Point. So I'm able to get back a little bit of hatred every time I throw a kunai via Impale. So same thing, we're just going to click some Impales, get rid of things from far away. Whenever things get a little too close for comfort, we can always fan a knives to just kind of keep the mob at bay and then vault away from them. Rift Guardian's coming up, so we could waste our Vengeance here, because we just burn through the Vengeance and all the hatred, just one-shot the Rift Guardian. That's what sometimes you want to do if you have Vengeance active and you have a lot of hatred. Alright, so we're pretty much going to keep leveling up the Zay's Stone Vengeance, because the higher up this gets, the more damage that we're able to deal to the monsters from far away, which is pretty much what you want to go. Honestly, when you're playing this, just think like you're playing a Bone Spear-like armor, but for the Demon Hunter instead, and that's how you're really going to play this set. You just got to think with the same mentality at this point. That was a 5 minute and 29 second clear time, so obviously when you go higher up in the Grey Rifts, you can shed a little bit of clear time. It's just based on the dungeon layout. Pretty much the RNG of the mobs, because sometimes you get a lot of elite packs that come out in certain layouts, and that will kind of make you able to clear things a little bit higher. But it's going to be the same strategy. Obviously, I clicked Shadow Power the minute I got in, unlike the last Greater Rift where I wasn't really paying too much attention to that, because we're higher up. This is Greater Rift 70, I should mention at this point. So it's the same strategy here. We activated Shadow Power, then you're going to fire off the Impales that are going to ricochet off the other targets. You see a lot of enemies on the screen that can potentially do a lot of damage. Case in point, you see the ones that can... Elite packs that fire off lasers, like there. You see elite packs that explode and fire off the snakes. You know which ones I'm talking about. I don't know them by name, I'm sorry. You know, see acid pulls, definitely you want to click Vengeance because you reduce the amount of damage that you take. And at the same time, you can also build up some hatred if you find yourself burning through hatred a little too much. But when you're in Vengeance, don't really hold in the button when you're using your Impales. Just kind of the same type of strategy. Kind of just feel it out, shoot off free, let them ricochet, shoot off and nerf free, let them ricochet. Don't hold it in Vengeance, because what's going to happen is you have a tendency to then burn through your Vengeance quicker than, or your hatred I should say, quicker than you're able to generate back that hatred, which is a big no-no. Because when you run out of hatred with this armor, and trust me, this is why I'm telling you, definitely use caution and use restraint, and do things a bit more reserved, because this is not a hold it in and go straight to the exit gate and win type of armor. This is one of those things where you have to keep an eye on that hatred and make smart plays. I've taken a lot of hits that would normally kill me, but based on the way that my passive abilities with Stone Gauntlets, as well as timing some Vengeance, I definitely probably have to keep my Vengeance going here because of Greater Rift 70. There's a lot of damage you can take. We're not 100% optimized, so keep that in mind. As far as optimization is concerned for this particular armor, on your helm, get crit hit chance 6.0%. If you can also get a crit damage on there, which is highly unlikely, or something that can reduce the amount of damage you take, definitely keep that in mind because you will need it for this armor. On your gloves, if you can, ideally, attack speed 7 or 8, critical hit damage 50%, critical hit chance 6%. If you can get all 3 of those rolls as best as possible or maximum rolls, you will find yourself doing a lot of damage and being able to push much higher Greater Rifts than if you don't have that on your gloves. Ooh, I took a bad death there. Also, when you get out to Greater Rift 70 with this set, keep in mind that chances of you getting a perfect 4-hit or 4-chance bonus to augment and level up your ancient legendary gems is probably not going to happen too often, so don't get flustered. Just focus on clearing things efficiently and fast. Keep in mind that when you're up in Greater Rift 70 and higher, chances of getting 4-piece chance bonuses decrease significantly, unless maybe you have already like Paragon 3000. If you don't, a lot of people don't, and there's nothing wrong with that, trust me. Diablo is a marathon. It's not a race. It's about the journey, not so much the destination. So that's where people really get the fun, is just coming back and grinding. That's really where the fun of Diablo comes from. Just grinding, getting that sense of accomplishment when you get stronger. And it's something that really, I like Diablo 3 because of the endless loop. Like, no armor is necessarily perfected. I mean, perfected would be Primal, Ancient, Legendary completely set, and that will take you sometimes years on particular armor sets to get everything you need. Alright, so as you can see here, there's a lot of things going on, waiting for my Vengeance to cool down, so I'm going to hang back here and fire off some Impales. Rift Guardian's very close to, I'd say, about another 30 seconds or so, roughly, if I can find another Elite Pack, and we will probably already see the Rift Guardian here. As you can see, this armor does very well at handling greater of 70s. Obviously, you want to hang back as much as possible. There's situations where there's so many projectiles coming along that you have to really keep a close eye, which is when you'll find yourself on higher greater rifts using Volt a lot more than you would do normally. Some people may ask, well, why don't you run the Danieta's Spike and the Air Weapon to be able to get some of your Volt off with Hatred? That's not recommended because you're going to be burning through so much Hatred with your Impales, which is what you really want to save your Hatred for it, so I don't recommend doing that at all. That would be a very bad idea. I do use Daniela's Spike on something, the Marauder set, which I will be focusing on the channel in, not next week, but the week after that. I'm going to be covering it on the channel, so definitely look out for that. Since we're in February now, I'm going to be doing 2 Diablo videos a week. This is the first one. The next one is going to be the Bone Corpse Lance Necromancer Pestilence set. That will be out on Friday, so definitely take a look at that. Trying to pick up some of these things, because sometimes you run into Ancient Legendary pieces or Primal Ancient Legendaries. I'm going to, once again, go back to same gem. I could level up the Bane of the Trap a little bit more, but I'm going to go Zay's Stone of Vengeance, because I want to get that stat much higher so it could do more damage from far away. But with this set, you're going to be zoning the mob, so keep that in mind. Think like Bone Spear Necromancer. So when you get to a greater rift, you want to automatically click your Shadow Power. You're going to get all the ruins. Then you're going to just start firing off Impales. If you see you're going to get in a situation where you take a lot of damage, that's when you want to click your Vengeance. Also, you can use Vengeance to regenerate some of your Hatred if you find yourself running very low on Hatred, so keep that in mind. When you get into really bad spots where you need to dodge super fast, use Volt to dodge away. And that's pretty much how the Shadow's Mantle plays in this particular build. You could go more melee with it. I don't recommend it because Demon Hunter is not a very bulky class. You can put Amethyst Stone in your helm to give yourself a bit more toughness. But as you go higher up in the Grave Rift, I do not recommend it. These are not an up-close and personal class, really. That's something better left to the Barbarian and the Crusader that loves to get up close and personal and has ways to mitigate the amount of damage that it takes. Really, when it comes to Demon Hunter, they are a pew-pew type of set, so you want to keep away and fire things from a distance where you could do the maximum amount of damage, or you use the Gears of Dreadland stat, which is pretty much auto-win set at this point, where you spin to win. If you want something of that type of playstyle, definitely look in the playlist. I'm going to cover more Demon Hunter armors, because I haven't covered really any of them outside of Gears of Dreadland, and now this one. So definitely I will cover Natalia's in the future. I will cover the Marauder set, and I believe there's one other set. So, thanks for watching. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next Diablo 3.